Hey, good afternoon, everybody. Hi, Vivian. Welcome to the Heroic Girls Book Club. I am John Marcotte. I'm the founder of Heroic Girls and the president. And
I'm Vivian. I just ran up some stairs, so I'm a little out of breath.
I appreciate you being here. She went above and beyond Call of Duty to make sure that she got here today. So I
Well, I wasn't expecting the elevator to be out, so that was the last part of my gauntlet.
well,
Was
yeah, you had a kind of a whimsical comedy of errors on your way to get here, but you made it, and that's the important thing. Today we are talking about one of my favorite books of all time, Wonder Woman, the Hikiteia. Uh, Both of us seem to have the deluxe edition. Definitely worth getting in hardback. It is a 2002 graphic novel. It was written by Greg Rucka, and I completely stand for Greg Rucka. He's like, you know that he's my favorite writer. We've already done one of his books. We did Stumptown early in the book club days, and this is the second one. If I was left just purely to my own devices, we would just read a different Greg Rucka book every single month because that's how much I like this guy. And it also has some just gorgeous art by J.g Jones, who did these beautiful painted covers, one of which you can see here, and then did more traditional line and ink art, comic art on the inside. Um, as always, let's start with this. Do you want to sum up the book, or do you want me to do it?
okay. Let me try, and then you can correct me because I feel like a lot of times I go off. So, um, I would say that the synopsis of this book is a young woman using an ancient ritual to bind herself to Diana,
Mm-hmm.
Wonder Woman, is kind of this mutual binding, and
The
then
Hiketeia. That's
called the
the
Hiketeia,
yeah.
and Wonder Woman then being kind of put in a position of whether how she can fulfill her duty through this ritual act to either protect the woman or fulfill justice, which is being pursued by Batman.
Right. Yeah, this is what I would say is this was an attempt to create a modern Greek tragedy. I mean, it has all the elements of it, much in the way
Mm-hmm.
that like Arthur Miller tried in Death of a Salesman. That's a modern Greek tragedy. He tried to
Yeah.
create that, and Greek tragedies are known for just no-win situations, and that's what Wonder
Yeah.
Woman is presented with here. And I actually think that Hikiteia, and we're not going to leave everything else aside. I'm not that big of a literary critic. I think it's a better Greek tragedy than Death of a Salesman. Arthur Miller tried to do something this nice, didn't do it. Now, Death of a Salesman's a great play in its own right, but just on the merits of is it a Greek tragedy, I think the Hikiteia does a better job. So yeah, we set up a bunch of opposing forces, and we don't really need them, but it's the personification of the bad things that will happen if Wonder Woman fails this kind of test of character. Are the Furies, the three goddesses of vengeance from Greek mythology that are just prepared to rip her from limb to limb if she either fails in her duty to um, uh, uh, perform this Hiketeia ritual and protect her supplicant, or if she fails to achieve justice. And so, what I love about this is that we get back to Wonder Woman's roots. We're right. Why not do a Greek tragedy with a superhero that's rooted in Greek mythology? You don't have to
Mm-hmm.
kind of play around with it. You can just bring the Greek Furies right in. She knows them,
Yep.
so that they're there, and you know this ritual and everything comes into play. Is all the Greek mythology stuff in the book is pretty much spot on. There's not anything that's too far of deviation, even down to the Furies being crawling with snakes in their hair and coming out of their wrapped around their arms and everything. That's how they were described in the ancient Greek myths. So, okay, the main protagonist, I should say that the driver of the story is this young woman, Danny or Danielle. We pretty close to the front of the book, we see her murder someone. She murders a guy that was actually looks like he was trying to kill her, and she manages to turn the knife on him and stab him through the throat. And Batman starts chasing her down, and she escapes from him once, and then he catches her on a bridge and grabs her. She's evidently committed a series of murders in Gotham, and she slips out of her jacket and falls into the water below, and he loses her. And we pick it up when she has found Wonder Woman, and she performs this ritual, the Hikiteia, which is throwing yourself on someone's mercy. It's basically saying, I give up all my honor, everything that I am, protect me, and in exchange, I will serve you. And so she does this ritual, she does it correctly, and so Wonder Woman accepts the Hikiteia from her. She makes this contract. Wonder Woman does not ask what she's running from. She doesn't ask what she did. None of that really is pertinent to the ritual. It's she did it correctly. She's going to honor it. So she comes in under Wonder Woman, and over a little bit of time, Wonder Woman uses her as her personal assistant in her duties as the ambassador from Themyscira, which in the comics, Wonder Woman, for a time at least, was the ambassador from Themyscira. I did love the kind of behind the scenes look at Wonder Woman's life. I think he did a great job here. I always feel comic books fail when the superhero is in the superhero suit the entire time, and we never see them do anything except punch other guys and stuff like that. Yeah. When you got to feel for Wonder Woman as a person in this, and as a character, and he was super successful at this. In fact, so much so that after he did this novel in 2002, DC put him in charge of Wonder Woman in 2003. He did a nice run on Wonder Woman, which is excellent if you can grab it. So, so that happens. And then, of course, Batman comes in, still tracking Danny down after a month or so, and finds her, and he wants to bring her to justice. But Wonder Woman has sworn to protect her, and it doesn't matter what she did. So there we set up the impossible situation. There we have three different forces going. It turns out that Danny had committed the murder she did. She murdered three men who had lured her sister to Gotham and then got her addicted to drugs, exploited her, and then eventually led to her death. And she sought vengeance against them, killed them, following the ancient Greek myths and the law of the Furies. She basically was inspired by the Furies. And then she threw herself on Wonder Woman with this other Greek ritual. And so now we have, she embodies vengeance, Batman's justice, and Wonder Woman's duty and honor. There's not a wrong or right answer here. It's implacable. All of them are meeting in one place, and there is no way out. And it is just so beautifully rendered. Let's start. What did you think of the story? Or do you want to start with art? I'm good either way.
Oh, I mean, I'm happy to talk about art because it's going to be really quick. The art is beautiful.
Yes.
I don't think anyone's ever going to say that like J.g. Jones doesn't know exactly what he's doing and how to execute it perfectly. Yeah. One of my favorite moments of his artistically in here is sort of the at the beginning where there's no dialogue, and he shows ancient Greece, and he shows the sort of through pantomime, right, what the Hiketeia looked like in ancient Greece, right, and it's set up very neatly, kind of like going from a ancient Greek vase into this sort of, so it's almost like you go into the vase and then into this sort of like silent world where you sort of see it play out. With, I think it's Wonder Woman in voiceover kind of explaining what the ritual is. Yeah. But it's some third party narrator. Yeah.
Probably Wonder Woman.
In her, I think we're in her thoughts. Yeah, we're in her thoughts at that point. So it's conveniently there's no pages here, but it starts on the third page actually, where she's looking outside her window and
it's right at the beginning of the story. It's the setup and the foreshadowing. Again, classic Greek storytelling techniques. Yes. We're foreshadowing what's going to happen. This ancient Greek ritual, we see someone throw themselves at the feet of a wealthy patron as people are chasing him and throwing rocks at him. So the patron takes him under his wing and protects him, takes him into his home. And then at some point later, things don't work out, and the patron kills the supplicant, the person who came to seek him for protection. And that's where we see what the consequences are of breaking this vow. The Furies descend on him and basically just rip him limb from limb. We always see them with blood around their mouth as if they just got done, eating somebody or something like that. I love this updating of the Furies. The Furies, like I said, we did some things very much from classical Greek mythology. Mm-hmm. There's three of them: the snakes, all that stuff, but they usually were clothed in black robes. I mean, that was somewhat traditional, but here we have them like in a parka, in a hoodie, so that it's these ancient Greek goddesses that are showing up wearing something that they might have picked up at Old Navy, and there's something about that I just love.
It's very. I mean, with them being pulled from myth, Diana is also pulled from myth, and there she is in her kind of her Old Navy chinos, and
Right.
So it's great to think about them walking among us. One of the things I really liked about that sequence, though, is it's basically mirrored at the end when Danielle reveals what happened to her sister, and so in the same way that you follow this man who supplicates himself, and then you see basically the act of the Hikiteia through this person who is kind of like, going through the ritual of it. The flashback to Danielle describing what happened to her sister plays out almost in the exact same way, where it's played out through pantomime with Daniela's voiceover this time.
Right.
And with her kind of describing the absolute tragedy within the tragedy of her sister's life and death.
Right.
So, even the color scheme, it kind of plays out the same way, where it goes from these like bronzy flashback colors into the blue, which I was taking to be like, oh, it's kind of like, it's Greece, it's sunshine, it's terracotta. And then to have that sort of repeated at the end, I was like, oh, that's really interesting. So beautiful artwork.
I had some brilliant point. Let me see if I can remember it. But I think it's interesting that the framing mechanism is the story begins at the end when Wonder Woman's looking out the windows at the end, and she's looking at the Furies. It's Irenes, I believe, is how you would pronounce that in Greek. Wonder Woman would do it much better than I am.
Irenaeus. I looked it up.
Did you look it up? Okay, or do you speak Greek? I don't know. Irenaeus. So the Irenaeus, the three goddesses. She's looking out at them after they were kind of one of the driving forces that she's just taken apart, and she's saying, why are you still here? It's done. Go away. She's waiting for them to leave because the tragedy has played itself out at this point.
Yeah.
And then the book takes us all the way through until we end up at the beginning, right in that scene where she's watching them leave again. So, one of my favorite things in here, it's kind of a story and an art moment because it's on the cover, is Wonder Woman's conflict with Batman. And again, so well motivated and so within character for both of them. And, a lot of times people that have dumb superhero fights because someone wants to see like Thor fight Captain America or whatever. So they, cook up something in the Avengers so they all fight each other. This was so organic to who we know these characters to be. We know who Batman is. We know who Wonder Woman is. Batman has a mass murderer or a serial killer basically in his mind that he needs to bring to justice. Batman is incapable of letting that go. He can't let it go. And that's another thing that you see all the way through here over and over again, that people say that they do things because they had no other choice. It's again, the Greek tragedy thing. This is destiny. There's nothing you can do about it. You have to do it. And so we set up this conflict with Wonder Woman. And what I love about it is I like Batman. He's one of my favorite heroes. I like Wonder Woman better, but I like Batman. And but I don't like the attitude that some guys have about Batman, that he just is untouchable. No one could ever beat Batman. Batman's invulnerable, everything. So Batman shows up and tries to push his way past Diana to bring the woman into custody. And that doesn't go well for him. He's supposed to be the best fighter in the world or something. I just keep thinking to myself, Wonder Woman's also one of the best fighters in the world, and she's been training for a few thousand years. And, and she can also trade punches with Superman. I just don't see any scenario where Batman comes out on top. I'm sure writers can cook up something, but generally speaking, it's not a good fight.
That's like the Tower of Babel. Right, like the only way to stop Wonder Woman is to put her in a situation where she will fight until she physically exhausts herself. So, if you think about Batman knowing something like that, then to me it felt more
planning and script and
but it's not going to be in a fisticuffs directly with her, right?
So clarity's sake, the Tower of Babel is a fairly famous, relatively recent, within the past 10 years, Justice League storyline. Batman had drawn up contingency plans on how he would defeat every single member of the Justice League in case they went rogue. and a bad guy gets a hold of them and manages to take out the entire Justice League using Batman's plans. It created some trust issues with the Justice League for a while that happened. It's a great run. I think it was Grant Morrison writing. Is that right? I always go for writers more than artists, but if I'm right, that was during Grant Morrison's run. It's really good. So check it out if you ever see it. It is a great run on the book. And yes, I was actually thinking that in the back of my head too, but I didn't think you had read it, so I wasn't going to bring it up. But
well, I mean, I think it's one of those things too, where like, because when I saw him, they really only have, despite the cover being so titillating of her stepping on his head, they really only have 2 confrontations, and the first one is over like that. Because she just chucks him out the window. And so when I saw him even approach her, I was like, oh, he thinks that she's going to step aside, right? Yeah. Because he knows that if he walks towards her and she doesn't want him to go any further, he's not going any further. So to me, that was almost like the first dipping of the toe for him to realize that the situation that he was in, like, because I'm sure to him, he thought that, oh, all I have to do is tell her that she's housing a murder and then she'll step right aside, right? So this was also for us, the reader, the sign that's like, no, she doesn't matter what previous relationship she has, how honor bound she is to the Justice League, like this ritual takes precedent.
I'll go one further. I don't think not only, and Melissa is saying that she thinks Tower of Babel is Mark Waid, which is certainly possible. He's another fantastic writer. Did what you call it, Kingdom Come for DC, the beautiful Alex Ross illustrated Future Story. Did a great run on The Flash. He's one of my favorite writers of all time. So yeah, okay, I'll go with Mark Waid. But I'll go one further than he thought Wonder Woman would agree with him. That Batman doesn't care whether she agrees with him or not. Batman's going to do what Batman's going to do. And again, getting back to that whole idea, it's fated. There's nothing he can do about it. This is who he is, and he has to bring the murderer to justice. There's no nuance there. It's why Batman fits so well into this Greek tragedy, is because he himself is almost like the Furies. He's a force of nature for justice, and he can't. You can boil every character down to an abstract concept that they embody, and they do it so well. Batman is justice embodied. That's what he is, and he can't stop striving for justice under the current law in the same way that Wonder Woman can't stop performing her duty under Greek law, and that's the conflict. And there's, again, no possible way to win. That's the beauty. Beauty is a harsh word to say, but the the eloquence, the fine way that Rucka set this up. This is so intricate and well plotted, and he leads you into this step by step by step. Until you realize just how trapped all these characters are by forces that are almost out of their control, that there's nothing they can do. This is just, it ends the way that it had to happen. And
I think it's also great, like such a great showcase too for Diana as well, because I got the sense that, maybe I'm reading too much into it, but I got the sense that, Hikiteia aside, that this would be a situation where her compassion would take lead. And she's one of those characters that I think, everybody has strength plus what's the extra thing, right? Like Batman he's also smart. Clark Kent, I can't remember what else Clark Kent would be. He's strong and he's normal, right? Like inspiring. I feel like inspiring. Yeah. Like, and I feel like, well, in my Superman is someone who is basically a normal person, right? So even though he's got all these spectacular powers, like he's a regular dude.
Right. There was a great, I'm sorry, I know I'm interrupting you, and I'm bad at that because I have ADHD, but there's a great quote that Batman or Superman is the disguise that Clark puts on to go out into the world and do good things, and Bruce Wayne is the disguise Batman puts on so he can interact with the world. At his core,
that was like that. I'm totally forgetting what it is. I think it might be one of the 52 reboots or something where they all put their hands, like, put your hand on the lasso of truth and speak your name, and Superman says Clark Kent and Batman says Batman.
It was the retelling the first time that Wonder Woman met Batman and Superman. She had come out into man's world, was throwing tanks around in a war or something like that, and they came to evaluate whether she was a threat or not. So she came to talk to them, make peace, and so she had everyone grasp the lasso of truth so they could understand that the words they were saying were true. She asked everyone to give their name, and Superman says Kal-El, Clark Kent, and Batman says his real name is Batman, which is just so perfect for Batman. That's who he is. He doesn't think of himself. The character of Bruce Wayne is a character. It's a pretense. That's not who he is at all. And I think that's a really interesting way of looking at the character.
Yeah.
So
I think for me, for Diana, like she's written a couple different ways. I think more so than some of the other big three, or even the rest of the.
Hey, I think I'm getting a package. Sorry about that.
Is her name Daisy?
No, it is Maggie. And
Maggie.
She's a good dog. Wasn't expecting anything on a Sunday, but there you go.
I think sometimes we get the Diana that's all warrior or the Diana that's all diplomat. And the Diana that I really love is the one that is, prioritizes sisterhood and has a great deal of compassion and has used her understanding of the world of man to garner positivity within herself and not become like warrior person. I also don't like the like ditzy hot born yesterday Diana that you see sometimes in like the DC animated universe. It's like, I've got a sword. And
there was David Finch did a run. I don't know why they did that after the Brian Azzarello and Cliff Chiang version wrapped up. They put David Finch in charge of it. The only thing he had written were a couple of adult erotic comics for this other company, Xenophile, where they take classic children's nursery rhymes and then sex them up. That's all he had done, and I just don't know why. He was drawing it. He drew her, and his wife wrote him, and it was just bad. It was just bad all the way around. They did that, and I did not like it. And
literally scratching my head right now. I wasn't. That's and I definitely I see the appeal. Even the Wonder Woman film kind of did that a little bit. But I definitely love this version of her. I love her name dropping Cassie and Donna just in this kind of offhand way, like her next two Wonder Girls. And then for Danielle, who's kind of the catalyst for the whole story, for her story to also be bound up with sisterhood was also very powerful as well. So that's why I feel like Wonder Woman's motivations outside of the Hiketeia would probably have been to protect Danielle anyway. Exactly. Thank you, Melissa. Wonder Woman often relates to her major adversaries with compassion and reason more than a lot of her counterparts. Agreed.
That is completely true. What I think is interesting, another thing about the story is we get the conflict set up fairly early, and the Furies are waiting for Diana to make a mistake. Diana is, by the end of it, put in an impossible situation because the Furies will punish you if you don't avenge somebody, and they will also punish you if you break a contract. When they tell the story of the Furies, which is another time we get one of these flashbacks, I don't know if she does a flashback, actually. I think she just tells us orally the story, and I'm going to try to I wrote down the guy's name and I'm looking for it, but she tells the story of Orestes. That's probably wrong. Orestes something. Anyways, he had killed his mother, so the Furies murdered him, and because he had killed his mother. But it's pointed out in the myth that his mother had killed his father. So if he didn't murder his mother, he would have been left his father unavenged, and the Furies would have murdered him anyway. So the Furies play this game where you can't win, and that's where Diana ends up. At the end of the book, if she doesn't uphold justice by bringing Danny to justice, they're going to get her, and if she fails to protect her from justice, they're going to get her. So we're set up to think of that's what the trap that the Furies have laid. It's a trap for Diana, and then right at the very end, we see no, it's a trap for Danny. That was what they did from the very beginning, because the Furies can also see the future. They knew what was going to happen. The trap was for Danny. They had set her up and gave her the same impossible choice. So she basically ended up with, she knew that Diana was going to die no matter what happened at the end. And so her choices were to stay there and watch Diana die no matter what her choices were, or kill herself, and to release Diana from her obligations. And she chose the latter, which is just very Greek tragedy thing to do.
For sure. I would say, like, on top of it being a Greek tragedy, it's also a really great mystery, because there are things that we know that Diana doesn't know, and then there's also things that we are revealed to us later on, you know, through Batman or through the Furies. But that's also part of the structure of Greek tragedy, right? It's kind of starting at the end, letting you know that something terrible is going to happen, and then getting into the meat and sauce of it.
I really wanted there to figure out some way that there was a Greek chorus in the story somewhere, but there's not. I wanted it to be there because that would have just completed every element of ancient Greek.
I kind of felt like the Furies sort of acted like a Greek chorus, because they're like these three women, almost like the witches from Macbeth, and they're sort of sitting towards the back,
like
and and so they're sort of like, you know, egging on a thought process from Diana, so that Diana can then think through the historical ritual, which sort of gives you like the outline of like, this is what's at stake.
Right. It is interesting. Diana, when she first sees them, assumes that they are there for Danny. So she goes down, and then that's when the Furies, playing their game, explain that they're there for her. She has to, you know, they're making sure she fulfills the Hikiteia and protects Danny from harm, and that's why they're there to watch her. And then when Batman shows up, Diana sees the trap she's in, that there's no, and that's why she can see them, is because they a little bit of foreshadowing, and then she sees the trap that she's in. It's interesting is Danny does not see the Furies at all. She looks where Diana doesn't see them there until the very end. She goes, I see them now. And that's when, that's the moment that Danny realizes that she is also in an impossible situation. She's either going to have to watch this woman that has protected her from all harm get killed in front of her, or she has to kill herself. Those are the only two choices. So, you know, taking the Furies aside as like the personification of something, the story works without them in it. It really does. But it harkening back to the Greek tragedies that are the Greek mythology that Diana's from is just a brilliant masterstroke. It is so well done to take these things that were abstract notions that the Greeks personified, and then just doing that again. You know, we could tell the same story where Batman and Wonder Woman come into conflict for these exact same reasons. You don't need the Furies floating around for this to happen. But adding the Furies just really grounds Diana in her backstory and her history, and you know, and it's just so incredibly well done,
deeply satisfying. It's so structurally sound, because it's not a long story at all, and it does so much with what little length it has. That was actually, I wrote down a couple of questions, and one of them was like, what do you think the significance is of when you can see the Furies? So Batman also can't see them.
No.
Even though he is one of the driving forces, which is applying pressure to Diana, right?
Well, I would say he is not one of the ones they're trying to ensnare. Batman is an exterior force that is there to put pressure on the other two. He's not really a protagonist in this. He's a, you know, you would call him an antagonist, but he's almost just a force of nature, because that's who Batman is. He's this, you know, external force that's applying pressure. You can't negotiate with it. You can't placate it. There's nothing he's going to accept except for bringing her to man's justice. And the same way that the Furies are, or something else. So I think you can see them when you start to see the way that they're trapping you. That was my interpretation of that. And that's why I thought that Danny couldn't see them at first, but at the end, when she all of a sudden realized her own horrible decision she was being forced to make, that's when she could see them. So that Diana could see them because she had the horrible decision earlier.
Yeah, I think Batman can see them the same time Danny does. Because
I don't remember.
They have.
Don't make me look.
This one right here.
Yeah.
This is not mirrored. So there's this lightning strike, and this is where Danny says, "I can see it now," and Batman says, "My God," right? And then if you go over here, they physically attack him. So unless he doesn't know if he just got knocked over by a strong breeze, you know, then he comes into contact with them, I think, the same time that Danny does. So I am curious if there was, you know, a couple of seconds where they could have somehow unrung the bell and outsmarted something, but I don't, that's not the point of the story, but like,
Right.
With the Furies. So you think that the visibility of them is kind of how closely ensnared you are in their trap.
Yeah. And perhaps that's the because Batman does not get it all the way up until that moment. He thinks he's going to find some way around whatever Diana's doing so that he can bring this girl's justice. And I think if we're just to stick with my own dumb theory, if we're going there, that's when Batman realized how bad this trap was that everybody was stuck in and what the consequences of it would be.
Yeah.
But yeah, the Furies were known for just being kind of heartless and cruel, and man, they are all that in this. Wonder Woman at the end of it is just incredibly sad. I mean, this Danny was essentially a good person. She was seeking vengeance in the way that, in another book, she would be the hero of the story. You could write a graphic novel about Danny going and finding vengeance on the men who ensnared and killed her sister, and that would be a good graphic novel, and we would all applaud her. But she's presented in a more complicated light in this book. So yeah, that
actually leads very nicely into my first question for you.
Yeah. Yes.
Which was that Danielle makes and by the way, just because everything here was so laden with mythology, I looked up the name Daniel, and it means God is my judge. And I was like,
oh, wow. Ooh, that's good.
Right?
Yeah.
So Danielle wanting to be, like, she makes a point where she says, like, her sister always wanted to be a movie star. I just wanted to be like you, meaning Wonder Woman.
Yep.
So I was wondering, what do you think it means that Danielle says she wants to be like Wonder Woman, but she takes vengeance by killing?
She interpreted being like Wonder Woman. I think she was obsessed with Wonder Woman before her sister was murdered and everything. It has nothing to do with it. And one of the things she knew about Wonder Woman is that she, Themyscira, lived by this ancient Greek code and set of laws. That's why she knew. That's why she knew the Themyscira, or not Themyscira, the Hikiteia, and she knew how to perform that ritual. Mm-hmm. I think when her sister was murdered, instead of looking to the laws of man, what should they do? Modern society, she looked to her idol Wonder Woman's laws. What would Wonder Woman do in Greek society in the law under Themyscirian law? And that was, you summon the Furies because someone has killed someone you love and you take vengeance on them. And that is what she did. Bad idea all the way around. But that's how she handled it. And that's what I took from that. I think she idolized what Wonder Woman represented. And it's, again, you can really see Danielle's point in that you could, in another time, if she had done this back in ancient Greek times, it would have been fine. That's exactly what you do. That's how you do it. It's just, another conflict is ancient law versus modern law, or religion versus secularism. All that stuff comes into play. And so that was what I got out of it. We get bare bones about Danielle's story, but that's what I thought that particular passage meant. I took that as a hinting that that's how she ended up in this mess in the first place, because we know she says she idolizes Wonder Woman. She wanted to be like her, and she knows all this stuff about Greek mythology. I think she studied, that was basically it. She wanted to be like Wonder Woman. So she learned what Wonder Woman would have done 3,000 years ago. Yeah,
that actually makes a lot of sense towards also why she would take her own life and then release Wonder Woman rather than release Wonder Woman and then allow herself to be arrested. And then, which would kind of diffuse the bomb, right? But she kind of has to follow the law, in the way that the Furies would be satisfied, because that's really it's not so much the law of Batman, which is the immediate threat. It's ancient force of nature Furies.
Yeah. The Furies would have gotten her if she had betrayed the nature of the Hiketeia in that way. So again, there were no good choices at the end of it. She got to leave on her own terms. I guess you could look at it that way, rather than getting savaged to death by the Furies. Because it should be pointed out that Wonder Woman's like, in this one, I think she's still a demigod, or she used to be a god. They've redone her origin so many times in DC, I can't keep track. But she's got nothing on the Furies. It is pretty clear early on that they could take her out with no problem. This is not a problem that can be overcome with force. No way that she and Batman are teaming up and taking out the Furies. It's just not going to happen. So it's another unstoppable force that is in this tragedy are the Furies themselves. They are vengeance personified, and they cannot be stopped. It's just there's no way to do it. So
yeah, I do also like their, another shout out to J.g Jones. The Furies are always very busy. If you look at them in the background of any frame, they're like, in a sisterly kind of way. They always seem to be like taking things from each other. They're like hassling Diana, like taking her lasso and just being general nuisances, which kind of
dog.
Yeah. Well, it's definitely like they're the chaotic evil, like what you're describing, right? Like they're just amongst themselves. They're just pretty awful.
They are in the background of a lot of scenes. If you're paying attention, there'll be 3 shadowy figures just hanging out there.
Yeah,
they're haunting this entire story. They're there almost the entire time, and it's so it is interesting. We see them in that capacity. Again, I would say another. I don't know whether that's J.g. Jones all by himself or if Rucka had written notes. I haven't read the script to this book, but yeah, there's some great characterization. They never just reduce people to standing around and posing as if they're in a panel of a comic book. People are doing things. Yeah. Even the Furies, after they got done shopping at the Gap, they came in and they're, they don't just stand there. They're actually active and doing things. And they seem to have distinct personalities too, which is also kind of cool.
I was trying to figure out, and I should probably do some research or something, but it seems like one of them is dressed kind of Greek and one of them is sort of dressed like Hercules in like a, the one shoulder Herculean outfit, and one of them might be nude. So I was wondering if there was some kind of significance to their...
Well, the Furies were created when Kronos castrated his father, Uranus, and in that act of son violating father, from the blood that came out after that, the Furies were born. So that's so I don't know if there's a direct tie, but I think you were getting more nods and subtle hints to mythology in there. They usually have wings too, is how they were described, and they're hideous. And they might have wings under the coat. I guess we never see under it, but I don't see the big distinct like. I was looking. I was like, oh, do we have like a little hunch? And they just hinted that there are wings under there, and I don't think we did really. But I wanted there to be wings. They don't seem to need them. They fly without it. The Furies actually are also a major character in The Sandman. Neil Gaiman's The Sandman. They're used in exactly this same fashion. They create a trap for Sandman. No matter what he does, there are going to be horrible consequences. And the entire time in there, people warn them not to call them the Furies or the Greek name, which I keep forgetting and mispronouncing anyways.
The Araneus.
The Araneus. They say, call them the kindly ones. So that's the name of the story, because you don't want to upset them. That's the entire
like point. Rebranding.
It's a rebranding, or just keep on their good side. Even referencing them in passing, don't say anything bad about them because they're awful. This actually, I shouldn't give away an end of a major Sandman plot in this, but let's just say that the Sandman, even as his demigod, is trapped by the Furies. It's just there's no way to win. That's the entire point of the Furies, is you can't win. And so it's handled exceptionally well here. Handled exceptionally well in the Sandman. This is probably my favorite Wonder Woman story.
Wow.
It's way up there. It's hard to say though, because I always have a preference for these graphic novels that are self-contained, and the ongoing storylines are sometimes great, but they bleed into one another, and it's hard to separate them out in your mind into a distinct story. But this is just way up there as far as establishing Diana's character and how she functions in society and who she is as a person, rather than just flying around and punching things and tying them up with a lasso. We get to see the kind of ethical dilemmas and things that she deals with as a ambassador from this Thermosea, this perfect female society, trying to show men a better way. That was the entire original intent of the character. She's coming to the world of man to show us a better way, and here we see her just completely trapped. And here's how you defeat Wonder Woman: is you give her this kind of impossible choice. There's no way she could win. Wonder Woman couldn't do anything about this. So It was super well done. And I want to
What
talk
do
a
you?
little bit more. Oh, go ahead.
Oh, I was going to ask, and then what do you think of? Because I was imagining at the beginning had that where they showed the example of Hikiteia gone wrong, where there's sort of a low man who throws himself at the feet of a rich man,
Right.
and then that rich man murders him, and then breaks the Hikiteia, and there's a specific word for it where you don't honor it. But you would imagine that had he not done that, maybe he would have worked on that man's farm or served in his household. In this world, Danielle becomes Wonder Woman's intern, or she gets an absolutely wonderful job out of it.
And it's pointed out that that's part of the ritual. So Wonder Woman kind of has to ask that of her. That has to ask, if in order to fulfill this contract, she has to offer to do work for Wonder Woman, and Wonder Woman has to use her in some capacity. So she makes her personal assistant, and we see that Wonder Woman's function as an ambassador and as a kind of a spokesman for Themyscira. There are all these events and things that she's asked to attend and things. So she's walking around, probably with a Bluetooth headset in one ear, taking notes and making appointments and keeping the schedule. So she does do some there. I noticed, I just now thought of something at the very beginning of the book when we go through her sister being murdered, and it's told twice. It's shown once kind of in pantomime, and then it's actually fully explained later. When they find her body, there is a black man that's one of the police with a goatee that is picking up the needle and obviously coming to the conclusion that she's just a junkie prostitute. And that's Detective Crispus from Gotham Central, which Rucka also wrote. It was Renee Montoya's partner. So that's just nerd stuff. I know you read that at some point. So that's and Rucka also wrote that storyline, and another one of my favorites of Gotham Central.
That is a great find. That's a great catch.
I just thought of it. He's bald and has the goatee, and it's just drawn by a different artist than we normally see. It was Lark who drew him in Gotham Central, and so it's slightly different style. But I'm pretty sure that's him. Detective in Gotham. He's plain clothes in both. So he just looks too much like him to not be him. So a little toss away ode to and continuity to one of the other things that Rucka did for DC that is excellent. Gotham Central. He also did a run on Batwoman when he reintroduced Batwoman into the DC universe, the modern version of Batwoman in the New 52 storyline. That was Greg Rucka. He created that character, and then did a big arc with J.g. Williams. I think it was Batwoman Elegy, but I'm trying to remember. There were two storylines. Batman died, and Batwoman took over Detective Comics for a stretch of time, and they told two parallel stories, and I can't remember what the other one is, but Rucka and J.g. Williams did one of them, and fantastic storytelling. Wonder Woman, you would have thought that this was going to fall flat on its face, but she's become an incredibly established and well appreciated member of the DC universe in a very short time. Most new characters don't stick. You create somebody and people are not interested, even from the big companies, perhaps especially from the big companies. They create new superheroes and villains all the time and nobody cares, and then they just go away and you never see them again. But Batwoman right out of the gate was really, really well received. She's got her own TV show now, so that's so those are two other DC projects from Rucka that I can think of that you should go read. Just anything with his name on it, buy it, read it. It's great.
So I actually thought that, speaking of spinoffs, because kind of early on when Diana she's having like an internal musing on sisterhood, and she mentions Donna, who's Donna Troy, and then Cassie, who's Cassie Sandsmark, who's later
second Wonder Girl.
Second Wonder Girl. And she goes into the Young Justice and the Teen Titans and stuff like that. I don't think she's ever been in any of the cartoons yet, but she's also a really interesting character. She's naturally a blonde, but to embody Wonder Woman, she wears a black wig and whenever she's in costume. So when I first, at one point, Danielle kind of goes into Wonder Woman's area where she keeps all of her costumes, and it's, Danielle gets on her knees and is telling Wonder Woman, like, ask me, like, tell me, like, ask me my truth so that she can admit to being a murderer. I was like 95% sure she was going to get turned into a Wonder Girl. And I, like, to me, I was like, oh yeah, you're an personal assistant, intern, you kind of like, you establish yourself that, like, you're smart. She can obviously fight. Like, in the very first scene, you see her overpower a man and kill him.
Right.
And then definitely didn't go down that,
no, we didn't end up there.
But it was just kind of like in my mind. Once I saw her next to the costumes, I was like, ooh, like, usually people don't stand in front of the Robin glass unless they're about to put the costume on or something, or steal a costume or something. So yeah, when the Furies show up and wake Diana up, I was like, oh my God, she stole an outfit. And
they, I think that we were being led down that path, and it was another way of showing that in any other circumstances, Diana would have continued to protect this woman. She would have continued to be her friend. I don't think Diana, if we take the laws of the nation, of where she lives out of it, I don't think Diana probably thinks that she did anything wrong. I think, she would say, hey, they brought that on themselves, and that's just the kind of thing that happens. Not going so far as some of the depictions of Diana, where she's like this bloodthirsty barbarian warrior, but just saying that this is, that's the kind of thing that happens when you murder somebody's sister, is they come back after you, and that's, that's what happens. And so I think in other circumstances, she could have ended up being Wonder Girl, or she could have ended up being the new Etta Candy that just is, a Wonder Woman's, friend and personal assistant. And we were led down that path because I think Rucka wanted us to see that these two had a bond and would have continued to have that bond in any other circumstances other than what was getting. I like at the end of the story that Danny is running away both physically from the embassy, and she is trying to escape the trap, the scenario that she sees is coming. And again, Greek tragedy, there's no escaping this. No escaping Batman, no escaping the Furies. You really can't escape Wonder Woman either. It's all coming to a head. So
yeah. Also, how freaky is it that the Furies can? I mean, I think it also just shows the Furies how thirsty they were for this absolute mess. That when Danielle ran away, the Furies actually show up in her bedroom, and they're like wakey, like time for this, huge disaster.
Yeah. Well, I mean, they're pushing the plot along. They have been the entire time. The Furies, when Danny runs away to try to, because she sees that Wonder Woman and Batman it's going to be a problem for Wonder Woman. She's going to have to keep dealing with Batman. This could just escalate and turn into a horrible ordeal. She doesn't want to put that on Diana, so she runs away from the embassy, which is, of course, her safe place. Now she's out on the street where Batman can get her. Yeah, and the Furies go wake up Diana to make sure she's there for this giant mess that's coming down. So because she's part of the story, and so they ensure that she finds Danny and Batman and interact. That I think that panel of Diana's boot on Batman's head is just one of my favorite things ever. It's I can't think of another character that did it in quite this way. She's taken him out, and she's got her boot on his head, and she says, "Stay down."
she says, "Don't get up."
Yeah, just don't get up. And, telling him, don't keep pushing this. And of course he's going to, because he's Batman, and that's what he does. And this story counts on our knowledge of that. We know Batman. We know he's going to be like that. He's not going to be able to let it go. That's just unfortunate. It's funny that he tries to use the Hikiteia ritual for his own benefit at the end of the story. Yeah. he tries to also throw himself on Diana's mercy, hoping that he can just perform the ritual enough to kind of get on the inside so he can get at Danny that way. And Diana shrugs him off, saying, you remembered the ritual and your mythology, but you forgot that when it was performed, the guy, I don't remember who it was, but turned him down, did not accept the ritual, because that is an option. I don't have to do this, and I'm not doing it with you. You're not coming from a place of sincerity. So
Yeah, I
Yeah,
think it's because he's doing it for a reason and not with full supplication. Like you have to
yeah,
like fully be
yeah.
um
It was a dishonest attempt at performing the ritual, and
yeah.
and I think anybody could have seen that, and so she was. It isn't like magic words that make her do something. She doesn't have to. If she doesn't think you're being honest about what you're asking, she doesn't have to agree to it. So,
Yeah. And
yeah,
I just love this whole Batman thing. I had to try, you know.
yeah, yeah. Well, we get those words over and over again through there. I had
Mhm.
to. I didn't have a choice. We get those. That is peppered all the way through the story. Every character at every turn says they don't have a choice. There's nothing else they could do. So yeah. So that's just another way that we've seeded it all the way through this kind of Greek tragedy feeling that we're in a Greek tragedy, that these characters are there, and yes, they have desires and motivations of their own, but they're put in these situations where there are no choices. This is the way it had to play out. From the second Danielle performed the Hikiteia at the beginning, this end was ordained. This was what was going to happen, and there's nothing anybody could do about it. In fact, Diana, when she's reflecting on it at the end, goes, I would have done everything exactly the same. There's nothing she would have changed. What could she have changed to do anything different? And you realize that's how intricate this trap is. Every character probably would have done exactly the same thing if given a choice to do it again. That's what would have
Yeah.
happened. So
And I think also like this is really depressing, but like with Danielle's lifelong dream to be Wonder Woman, spending her last days with Wonder Woman had to have been probably the best possible thing that she could have, that Diana could have given to her.
Yeah, it's yeah. So, anyways, I guess we're getting pretty close to the end of our time here, aren't we?
Oh yes, producer Patty says 3 minutes.
3 minutes. All right, we got 3 minutes. So
2 minutes ago.
I want to point out that if you buy the nice deluxe edition, I can't remember if it was in the earlier edition or not. They have a gallery of J.g. Jones covers from when he was doing the covers for the regular Wonder Woman book. They don't really relate, but just gorgeous stuff all the way through the back. Highly recommend those. His work is often confused with Alex Ross because they both do these, quasi-realistic paintings of the superheroes, and that's a high compliment if you're getting compared to Alex Ross. And the book was actually out of print for a little bit. The DC let it lapse, and there was no graphic novel you could buy it in. And the big, conspiracy theory on the street was that DC did not like the story because it showed that Batman was getting his ass kicked and that he's their bread and butter, so they didn't like it. It came back into print, so I'm going to dismiss that. But it was fun for a while. I would love to see them. You want to make your Wonder Woman and Batman movie not suck? Do this story. My God, this would be fantastic as a film, because they're so human and yet so they're the conflict is not that they have to defeat the space alien. The conflict is internal, and yet it externalizes itself where these two icons come crashing into one another. This would just be a fantastic. It would be very ballsy of DC to do it, but I would love them to adapt this. This really deserves it.
Absolutely, because the problems are so grounded in reality of, unfortunately, like the question of vigilantism, right? Someone taking justice into their own hands, and then Batman taking justice into his own hands. And, unfortunately, we're having to look at that really long and hard right now. And then but the story also includes elements of magic as part of a narrative constraint, but really all the problems that they're having are bound in our world. So
yeah, it's that whole idea that, again, you could leave the Furies out of it and it probably would have played out in almost the exact same way. Every character would have done the same thing. So I think we're gonna wrap it up there. I'm giving this a huge thumbs up. Again, it is one of my favorites. And producer Patty has thrown up the cover of next month. We are reading Saga Volume 1, one of the all-time great graphic novel series. We chose next month because the book has been on a 2-year hiatus. And in January, it's picking up again. So we thought, well, this is a great time. If you haven't read it, you can read it for December and, dip your toe in the water right before it comes back. Maybe you'll get hooked like everyone else on the planet who's ever read it does and end up, catching yourself up in time to read the new stuff that's just about ready to come out. All right. Well, I think that about sums it up. Any last thoughts, Vivian?
Can't wait to go back and read more Saga again.
Saga's awesome. All right, guys, we will see you in a month. Take care. Goodbye.
Bye.